Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Employment Committee meeting. Great to see people here. Thank you. Okay, the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillors Jordan and Hassel, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. First item is the minutes of the last meeting. Is everybody happy to approve these as a correct record?
Thank you.
Sorry, I seem to remember there being a conversation about health and safety at the last meeting, which I don't see reflected in the minutes at all, in terms of us asking for some sort of reporting.
So I do remember putting something in there. So the final paragraph of minute 12, at the conclusion of their deliberations on this item, members considered areas they might usefully investigate, including home working arrangements and policies and health and safety. So it was there to pursue if needed. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So you're happy for me to sign? Okay, agenda item 2, members' interests. To receive any members' declarations as to disclosable pecuniary, other registrable and non-registrable interests in relation to any agenda item. Do we have any? Thank you. Agenda item 3 is the workforce report, Q3 2022 to 2023, which you should have all seen. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you. So workforce information, this is for Q3, which is the 1st of October 2022 to the 31st of December 2022. At the end of Q3, our workforce had a headcount of 621 and a full-time equivalent of 565.7 heads. This is lower than the end of the previous quarter, where headcount was 627 and the FTE was 574. Our pay bill, the forecasted spend on all pay costs for employees is currently estimated to be around 1.525 million, apologies, 101,525 lower. It's lower than budget. In contrast to this, there's an estimated overspend on contractors and agency staff. It nets out to an overspend of around £22,000 against the staffing budget. There is a continued focus on the vacancies to be filled in different methods to continue to reduce our contractor spend. Leavers within the quarter. There were 20 employees that left the council in Q3. This was lower than the last quarter where there was 25. The percentage turnover for the previous 12 months was 18.5%, which is lower than the previous quarter of 20.2% and continues our trend of reducing turnover. In the previous quarter, one of the leavers was a fixed-term Kickstarter placement, and we continue to see those impact our turnover numbers. There was one retirement in the previous period, and that officer had 32 years service with HDC. From looking at the data, you can see the top reasons for leaving are pay, job change, and commute or transportation and family reasons. The factors that were discussed in the last quarter's reports are still valid this quarter, and the top reason for leaving being pay is reflective of the current economic climate. Recruitment continues to be an area of focus within HR. There was a decrease in the activity in the last quarter, but we'd expect to see this with it being the Christmas period, which is not an ideal time to recruit. We are still in a challenging recruitment market where we've had to have a number of vacancies where there have been failed campaigns or where there has been little or no interest in vacancies. The most difficult to recruit areas have been planning, which continues, one leisure and HR. The recruitment team continues to support the HDC by looking at alternative ways to recruit. such as amending our paperwork to make us more attractive to candidates, encouraging, where possible, agile recruitment campaigns such as CV acceptance we discussed last time, and pushing our grow your own agenda through apprenticeships and other routes. Within employee engagement, we're always looking for ways to engage and support our employees. And this quarter, we have successfully launched a benefits platform to all employees, which offers discounts and lifestyle benefits to all employees. We've provided flu jabs to employees that have wanted them, and we have launched the all employee temperature check survey in January 2023, which the questions have been included on the appendices of this report. HDC has also welcomed 5 industrial placement students in this quarter from Cambridgeshire Regional College. The summary in terms of sickness, our average annual sickness has increased from 7.9 days per FTE to 8.4 days per FTA, and the number of days has increased from 1,088 to 1,406. It is expected to see an increase in this quarter due to the number of coughs and colds, which was our second highest reasons for absence. Our sickness rates are significantly increased by long-term absences, for which we are supporting and actively managing all those colleagues off with long-term absences. At the previous meeting, it was discussed that musculoskeletal issues were related to home working, and we were questioned if that was a correlation. Having reviewed the data, the absences related to individuals that are not working from home and in our operations teams. So there isn't that link that we suspected there might be. Speaking with the health and safety team, we explored the actions taken for home workers, and there are approvals for obtaining IT equipment at home, and there is DSC training and assessments for everybody working in the office and at home that's rolled out through e-learning. HR caseload, this did increase in the previous quarter, but this is in line with what we'd expect to see with increased absence rates as we support those people with absences. An additional point in this report was our gender pay gap reporting, which is our annual reporting that we have to publish, and the data relates to comparing our average pay by gender across the organisation. This data shows where we are, and our 2022 mean gender pay gap is negative 1.37%. The UK average pay gap is in favour of men to 7.9%, which shows how amazingly well HDC are doing with our gender pay gap. So in summary, we have a challenging time with absences and recruitment that continues on, but we are working to look to improve this, and we'll look with a workforce strategy to help to bring together those points.
Thank you very much, Nikki, for your report. Appreciate that. Just one, please. Thank you.
Thank you. If this has been dealt with, Chairman, I apologise, but I've missed a couple of meetings. I'm thinking of looking at page 7, the second paragraph, which was talking about the budget regarding staff remuneration. I noticed that I seem to remember seeing it, but I would like to my mind refreshed. There is an estimated overspend on contractors and agency staff. And I wondered if the agency staff was linked to the problems we've had recruiting, which you touched on, suggesting it may be the time of year not a good year to recruit. So is that the reason why that the overspend has been increased? Because we have had to use any agency staff to cover our frontline services?
So there are certain roles that have been covered by agency staff due to challenges with recruitment. But we're continually looking at ways how we can reduce that contractor spend and alternative ways of recruiting.
Would that be through operations?
Thank you. I'll just nip in, if I might, Councillor West. So some of it is a commitment to deal with areas where we know we have issues. So yes, operations have an agency pool of staff, but as you've heard from our colleagues in HR, they're trying to reduce the reliance on agency. But there are some parts of the organisation where we've deliberately put more money into consultants and agency staff to shift some of the problems we had. So planning is an area in particular where we have put resources in because we know that we have backlogs that need to be cleared, and more often than not there are productivity benefits to use agency staff because they can literally just concentrate on the backlog. Thank you, Chair.
Chairman, I'm very pleased to hear regarding planning. I hope that might come up. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay, Councillor Gladdo.
Thank you for the excellent report as usual. Councillor West actually sort of was captured the question I was actually going to ask, but it's a supplementary to that, and John may well be able to answer it. It's quite a lot of money in terms of the amount of spend. 1.5 underspend and overspend respectively. What are we doing to actually reduce the number of contractors? Is this just a temporary, you see as a temporary blip, or is there a problem? We know there is a problem with planning particularly, but anything else?
I'll just come in there, Chair, if I may. So there are certain parts of the organisation where we do routinely use agency, and I think Councillor Mickelburn knows another area where we use IT, where sometimes it's better to use agency staff who have specific skills that we would struggle to recruit to. Because sometimes we just need them for a fixed period of time to deliver a particular project. So there will always be a need for agency staff or contractors in an organisation of this size with the ambition that we have, because to have full-time permanent resources would not always be the best way to fix the problem. So we are looking to manage the size of the consultancy and agency bill, because obviously it's a big lump of money, but wherever we can we will look to have permanent established posts, but I would never say that we will never have agency or consultants on hand. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Gladdo.
Sorry, my other question was that you highlighted specific areas, obviously planning. I noticed the report ICT, but I also noticed you've got a bit of a problem with HR. Is that just temporary, or is that actually becoming a bit of an issue for you?
I'm pleased to say it was a temporary issue, and we were recruiting some quite specialist roles in the team, which thankfully we've actually recently filled. But HR is a challenging area to recruit to a lot of the time.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Corley.
Thank you, Chair. These days lost. I'm looking at the table 2.1 on page 19 or page 13, whichever number you're looking at. I can't see what the years are, but I'm assuming it's roughly the same as the table below 2.2. If you could just, it's the same time scale, yes? Thank you. So we've gone from 5.8 days per FTE to 8.4. And I hear all the issues, and we've gone through what we've gone through. How are we comparing with our peers? So those around us, is this a specifically Huntingdon issue, or is it an East of England issue, or is it a national issue? Please.
Don't have the exact figures, but based on my knowledge of sort of HR across the country, it's a national issue. Absence rates are rising for a majority of a number of different reasons. There is still an impact of COVID and mental health issues based on that, plus other long-term illnesses are coming into the fore.
Councillor Corley.
Sure, thank you. It might be interesting for this panel at some stage to see how we compare with our local councils in this area. It's a suggestion, Chair, that we might want to look at. I have another question, if I may, Chair, and it's completely gone out of my head. Yes, musculoskeletal issues, which we mentioned in terms of, what practical steps are we taking
to support our staff. Now that we've identified it's not a home working issue, and I'm glad to hear we're doing some DSC assessments. I'm assuming this is it's all operational related or predominantly operational related. So what are we doing practically around, I don't know, toolbox talks, checks, daily checklists, whatever it takes to get people to think about what they're doing in this space?
If I may answer, so I work very closely with our HR business partners who work with the sickness information. So what they do when they look at the data around this, they look at the analysis and whether there is any kind of common themes going on in certain services. So previously, if we've seen like MSK or certain types of accidents or issues that occurring in operations like trips and things like that, we do work with the managers there so that they can do some they do toolbox talks there so that they can talk about not running and, you know, different educational pieces around that. We also use occupational health as well. So if we find that in a certain area that it is kind of to do with the way people are sitting at their desk and things like that, we can include them to get support.
Councillor Gledo, thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you. I was just looking at your CV, or rather your recruitment process, saying that you're obviously trialing new processes in terms of actually just using CVs and written letters rather than the forms. I just wondered how it was going.
The recruitment team has seen a really positive response from having the covering letter and CV. It's seen that application form sometimes can be a blocker. So we have a lot more positive response with those, and we're continuing to trial them in service areas that are happy to do so.
Okay, thank you, Nikki and Kieran. A few questions that I've received, and obviously I'd wish to ask myself. Again, on the sickness, I think it's raised it's high for stress, anxiety, and depression. Also, the high number of days lost to the coughs, colds. I appreciate this is seasonal, versus the low take up of the flu vaccination. I appreciate that perhaps some employees can source it sort of locally from their pharmacies, etc. But from my meetings with some of the members and the ERG reps, there's certainly a desire to maintain this free vaccination service ongoing, please. So, and also if we can encourage take up probably to get a sort of more balanced level if possible, that would be useful. Thank you.
Just so we have encouraged people and more.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you. Are there any further questions? Oh, Councillor Gledo, thank you.
Sorry, I'll be brief. You can ask one there. I noticed actually on your report that we're looking to grow our own in specific areas, and I was wondering what you're actually doing in terms of that, particularly within planning. I know it's a bit of an issue. What are you actually doing on that?
So at the moment, we're looking at particular apprenticeship schemes, and also if there's other routes that we can approach colleges to attract early applicants from people who are studying in relevant qualifications to train them through to become qualified planners.
Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chair. On section 4, one thing I was quite interested, I can't see it covered, and I just wondered if, for my own benefit and obviously for the committee, if there's interest, is the profile of people how long they've been with the council, because we obviously see the age ranges, but I'd be really interested to see, do we have lots and lots of people who've been here 20 years and loads of people who've only been here 1 year and nobody in the middle? I'm just kind of intrigued if we have that information.
We certainly can gather information and provide it to you.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Nikki. I just wanted to pick up on Councillor Corley's point about comparing the council with other administrations. On the sickness side, is is this possible? Is this a huge exercise, or can we obtain some meaningful data for comparison?
We can certainly reach out to our partnering councils and try and obtain as much data as possible, and also what's published to give some meaningful information to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any further questions? Okay. 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 So everybody in agreement that we will consider the report, receive report. Thank you. Okay. Moving on to the pay policy statement 2023 to 2024. Back to Nikki again, please.
Thank you. So this is the policy statement for 23-24. So under the Localism Act of 2011, we are required to produce and publish an annual pay policy statement. The purpose of the statement is to ensure transparency and accountability with regards to our approach to setting pay. This statement must be agreed by full council and published on our website by the 31st of March 2023. So we ask the committee today to consider and comment on the report before it moves to full council.
Are there any comments for Nikki? Report. Okay, none. So we're happy to receive the statement. Okay, thank you.
When the council to
Yes, and to recommend it to full council. Okay, thank you. Okay. Moving on,
Should we just clarify the point on Councillor Corley? So the purpose of this committee is to recommend the policy to the decision makers. The decision makers, because it's a policy, would be full council. Yeah.
Thank you. I understand that the wording of the paper then therefore is wrong, I would argue. It's asking the committee to approve the pay policy statement and not actually to recommend it to the decision makers.
the minute will say that that you've approved it and recommended the full council to approve the policy. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
okay, if we can take a show of hands, please. Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4.
All recommending for approval.
Yeah.
Okay, so all in favour?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Any against?
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Time off for trade union duties, and this is following the signing of our voluntary recognition agreement with Unison in the summer of 2022. It is now a requirement for HDC under the Trade Union Facility Time Publication Requirements Regulations of 2017 to report annually on paid time off provided to trade union representatives for them to take union duties and activities. To facilitate this requirement, a policy has been produced to support the process and to ensure that relevant individuals are aware of the time off that's allowed for trade union duties. This will allow for HDC to complete statutory reporting in a timely and accurate manner. I attach the policy for your information, and I ask you to consider and endorse this new policy.
Thank you, Nikki. Yes, a very comprehensive policy, hopefully to cover all eventualities, just is to reps to be converted to representatives. Yeah, for good reading. Thank you. It is appreciated. But are there any comments from the floor? Councillor Gledo.
Thank you. A very comprehensive document. Is this standardised across other councils, or is this just specifically for Huntingdon?
This is for Huntingdon, but it is standardised, similar for most unionised environments.
Okay. Just wanted to mention to our Unison reps here, members, do you have any comments on the policy yourselves? Monica?
No comments from me.
What is the standardised form in there?
Thank you both. Okay. Councillor Corley.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a few questions. If I understand rightly, we have voluntarily recognised unions in this council. Is that the case?
Yes, that's correct.
I was unaware of that, but thank you for clarifying that. I have a few questions. As I've read this, and I accept this is pretty standard stuff. I just wanted to question. There's a lot of mention of reasonable in this document. Who decides what reasonable is my first question, and how do we agree what reasonable looks like in terms of time to do whatever and time to do this and all the rest of it. And I fully accept that that's got to be part of what we're doing here. So that was my first one, please. Thank you.
Unfortunately, there is no set for reasonable. It is around allowing our representatives to undertake the appropriate amount of time to undertake their duties effectively. But it would come down to discussions.
If I may, Chair, I mean, that's what I was expecting to say. That, quite frankly, that concerns me because my idea of reasonable, your idea of reasonable, and somebody else's idea of reasonable would be very, very different. I would be happier to endorse this if there was some sort of stipulation or some sort of agreement around what reasonable looks like. And I accept that I'm asking, what's the length of a piece of string here? But quite frankly, if I decide in my duties that I've got to have 3 or 4 days a week, and I believe that's reasonable, and that's what I believe it's going to take, I'm out of this organisation 3 or 4 days a week potentially. Do we then end up spending more money on backfilling my role because I'm being reasonable? And you can't argue against that because you've not defined what reasonable might mean. And that's what concerns me.
Okay, thank you, Nikki. Are you happy to answer that, Nikki, or would you like Councillor Gleadow to come in first? Okay, thank you.
Again, which is one of the questions I asked initially, was, is this a standardised form? So I'm not presuming, because I think it's a very valid question, but presumably we can check what other councils locally have this and what would be a reasonable or average timescale. Could we perhaps provide something of that order? Would that be helpful?
We can certainly ask, but I think, as my colleagues from Unison would probably confirm, reasonable depends on what happens at that point and that year with, disciplinary issues or consultation issues. It would be difficult for us to say that you can have X number of hours a year because priority change.
Yeah. Councillor Keane.
Yes, I mean, on that point of reasonableness, that definitely sort of jumped out to me as well. I find it very difficult as well to endorse this. I think we need some checks and balances on this for sure, and especially.
I think we're in new territory here for the district council. The recognition agreement, as Councillor Corley said, was a voluntary recognition agreement, and I think we're finding our feet. The relationships are new, and I know that there are standard operating procedures in certain councils, but I don't think it's unreasonable that we just maybe defer it from this meeting and just go away and reflect on the comments that we've heard to see whether there is any way that we can maybe not necessarily strengthen the wording, but just try and provide some context which we could then look back to review. Because I don't think tonight we can come up with a solution. The language of reasonable is a universal language. And I've worked in many unionised councils, and reasonable, I've said earlier on, the amount of hours I've spent in my life arguing over what reasonable is, it's just not worth recounting. So I think rather than try and resolve it on the hoof tonight, that we can just have a conversation with colleagues from Unison, and just see if we can give both sides a degree of certainty, which wouldn't lead to tensions or issues, because we do have new reps who need to be confident in their role, and as an employer, I wouldn't like to leave them exposed to challenge if there were going to be issues around what constitutes reasonable. So we can certainly do that. I think, Nikki, if that would be.
Councillor West. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Robert. Sorry.
Do you want me to go ahead, or somebody else want to speak? Chairman, I started off at 2.6 regarding the senior leadership, and the union representatives have been involved and discussed this, and it's been given to them. There's no question about it. In this country, I believe industrial relations have been an absolute disgrace. And I think, frankly, when you clap somebody one day and then as soon as they want a decent pay rise, you bring the law in, I think it's absolute disgrace. And I was particularly pleased this was mentioned in the early days when I was chairman of the employment committee. It was started to be mentioned a few months or weeks before we had a change of leadership and change of party governing the district. I want this to be successful. I think it's so important that it is successful to bring together the unions and to bring together management to work together to deliver what we're here for, which is for the residents of the district council. Now, one thing which did give me a little bit of comfort, but not to my colleagues, was the time off procedure. Before taking time off, the accredited representative must obtain the permission of their manager. And I felt it wasn't quite, we fancy a couple of days off, so we'll have a meeting. So I feel, by all means, further discussion, because something new, which none of us are 100% certain how it will work, may be desirable. But I do think it's a great shame that we've got to this point here. And I do think it's a great opportunity. And I think our union representatives want to bear this in mind. It's a great opportunity for senior management to be supported and unions to be supported to deliver for the staff, also to deliver what we're trying to deliver for the residents of Huntingdonshire District Council. So I hope everyone really puts their heart and soul into this and makes it work. I think it's so important. But I'm quite happy to go along with the feel of the meeting, but I do desperately want this to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor West. Who's next? Councillor Micro, sorry. Yes.
I just wanted to pick up on the point of reasonable. I also have had lots of my life lost to defining what is or isn't reasonable. The comment I would make is just that there lacks an arbiter within the paperwork that I can see, who is then the appeal point if someone is deeming or exceeding what is considered to be reasonable. So just as a comment in, I think that a couple of lines of process just around any clarification of that point would probably be useful.
Okay. Molly, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in our previous meeting, we spoke about having a timesheet for Unison Rep. So there would be a process of us saying how much time we've spent, what we've spent our time on. And as this is a new process going forward, if that one needs to be reviewed monthly with HR or line management, I don't see that being an issue. But at the moment, there's 3 reps. So I don't see there being too much time lost to HDC.
Thank you, Molly. Councillor West? Councillor Keane? Councillor Keane, sorry.
So, I mean, I sort of follow Councillor West's point. We do want to make it work. Obviously, we went into the voluntary recognition. I think, but I do feel strongly that we need to take this away. I don't think I could endorse this tonight as this, and I'll give you a very small point about that. It says in the document that rooms will be provided free of charge to Unison when they're doing their work. The political representatives of this council can't use rooms politically without paying for them in the district council. I don't see why Unison would have a better deal than the elected representatives. So I really would be interested to see if we go away and talk about some of those points. I think this is a very generous document towards Unison, and I think it needs some work, to be honest.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Corley.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come back on a point that my colleague Councillor West, none of us for a moment think that Unison reps are just taking a day off and swinging the lead. So please hear me that. And also, we do want this to work. I wonder if someone could just explain to me what 15.1 means. Having read it, I'm not sure what it says because I don't know what Section 13, Para 3 of the Trade Union Act says. So if someone could maybe explain that one, please.
This is the data that we have to report under the TOCRA. So it's around the amount of time and the cost to the organisation of that time.
Thank you. So is that information that we as a panel would be able to see, or is it totally confidential?
The hours and cost you could see, 'cause it's something we have to publish every year. So it's something we can provide to you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Can I suggest that that is something that is added to our quarterly report then, that we see those costs on a regular basis?
Yes, thank you. Nikki, is that something you are able to arrange?
In agreement with Unison, as long as they can are happy to provide the timesheets quarterly, yes.
Okay, Robert, thank you.
Thank you. It's just some, sorry, I'd just like to thank Councillor West for his words on the NHS and the attacks on nurses and doctors at the moment. Reasonableness, it isn't defined anywhere. And so I take your point there. When it comes to health and safety representatives, though, there isn't a time limit because of the nature of their work, and they're protected under the work that they have to do under the Health and Safety at Work Act. And if Huntingdon District Council refused to give a health and safety rep time off to investigate an accident, particularly one that was reportable, there's a possibility that there would be a fine charged to them for not complying with the Health and Safety Act. When it comes to representatives and what's sometimes referred to as a reasonable time off, it's what the Huntingdon District Council would normally attribute to anybody who's undertaken public sector duties. So somebody like if you had somebody in the Territorial Army or Special Constable, that type of role, that's normally been taken as a round definition of what reasonableness is. But if you want, I can supply figures from Cambridgeshire County Council. I can supply figures from East Cambs District Council, South Cambs City Council, whichever you want, or all of them, to give you a rough estimate of how many hours their trade union reps take off a year. I would imagine it's no more than going to be 3 days, and that's for everybody, not individually. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Is that something that you may find useful, Nikki, when we for further review of the document?
Yeah, that'd be really useful. Thank you if you could provide that, and then we can work through it. Thank you.
Are there any further questions on the document which I've... Okay, yes, so if I can take a proposal, please, to defer the document pending some further review on it. Thank you, Councillor Corley. And do I have a seconder, please? Councillor West, thank you. Okay, and is everybody in agreement that we all in favour that we review the document for a further meeting?
Can I just clarify, when we say a further meeting, we're talking about the next meeting, which will be what, in 2 months? So we're talking April? Are we when we June? We're talking about deferring this paper to June.
Now, that's probably a question I will need to pose to Nikki then on any urgency on timescales required for this. Is it something we've obviously not had before, but we would like to put in place?
So we'll have the requirement to report the information, but due to us starting this year, we won't need it in place to report until next year. So we do have some time to allow us to work this through.
Okay, so we're just discussing whether there is another alternative, because the next meeting is in June. An alternative would be to delegate the decision to the managing director after consultation with some or all of. It's quite a small committee, so some or all members of the committee. Would that be a preferred option? So,
The practical question is, if we defer it, what does the impact have? Would it prevent people from being able to take this time, or would it be that it would be under the arbitration of the managing director in the meantime?
Yeah, so we're already up and running. The voluntary recognition has been in place for a while, so we're working already. What we're trying to do with this document is formalise arrangements, as I say, so it gives the trade union reps some protection and recognition of the roles that they do. So we'll continue on the basis of a tolerated working arrangement on both sides. But I think it's quite important that we get this resolved, so it gives everybody a really clear steer. So in terms of the day-to-day operations, no, our colleagues will continue to operate, and they're working really closely with colleagues in HR just to make sure that that works. So I think, you know, if we are comfortable with a delegation, I think June is too far away. Speaking personally, I think it's something that needs to be resolved for everybody's sake. So if we can do the delegation, we can have a conversation relatively quickly. Thank you, Robert. I think information from other districts would be really useful in just helping to try and tell the story, so we can then share some of that insight with the panel offline, informally, with a secured delegation. I think that would work. Yeah, we can confirm that. Yep. So just for the record, so the advice from our colleague in Dem Services that we can then bring the confirmed position back to the June meeting, just again, so it's on the record. Yeah.
So in terms of process, are you happy to withdraw the original proposal and second to defer it and replace that with authorise the managing director to approve a finalised version after consultation with members? So same second as a proposer and second. Okay, thank you. And come back to the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, and can I take a vote that you're happy with, in favour?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and none against. So
Any
that's approved.
against? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Agenda item 6, representatives of employees. Are there any representatives who wish to raise or consider any issues? ERG,
Suggest ERG first and then.
yeah, our ERG representative and Unison.
Does Caroline have
Yeah.
anything to raise?
Caroline, thank you for joining us. Do you have anything you wish to raise at the meeting? No, thank you. And moving on to our Unison colleagues,
No.
anything you wish to
Just
add to the
nothing, Chair.
meeting?
Nothing at all, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for your contribution. Okay, and appreciate your attendance and contribution tonight. Just a final message, because we have our beautiful arrangement from the iCare Awards that's still behind us. For those of us that were able to attend, it was a very uplifting event. 93 nominations as some very well-deserved winners. So thank you all for attending. Thank you and good night.